Welcome to the Book Fair Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have a debut graphic novel written by a high school student, a school board attempting to make young adult an 18-plus category, and bookstores in Utah standing in opposition of the state's book bans. Coming this Friday, we will have an interview with Alex Rittany, author of Maybe Tomorrow I'll Know. Let's get this episode started with a look at new releases, starting with The House with Nobody in It by John Klassen. In this gently eerie board book ghost story, Klassen invites readers to venture into the ostensibly empty residence that inspires the work's shape. Narration proceeds in a neutral tone as a speaker invites the curious to enter via a doorway. There is nobody in this house. There used to be somebody, but there is nobody now. Let's go look inside. As the tour moves along, each progressive spread represents a new room. Die cuts allow glimpses into surrounding spaces, and straightforward commentary observes the abode's spare, darkly lined decor. Soon, the light in the house begins to dim, and a spectral figure appears in a chamber that's described as hosting a small stool on the floor and a lamp. Wholly unmentioned by the speaker, the ghost is subsequently seen staring out through the die cuts as the remaining pages turn, delivering readers again outside. There is nobody in this house. There used to be somebody, but there is nobody now. Via deadpan prose that seems to hinge on a literal interpretation of no body, the narrator's perhaps unreliable observations deliciously heighten the dwelling's sense of mystery. Giving youngest readers ample space to contemplate their own perceptions, Klassen again displays a remarkable knack for creating lingering, fully realized works through the sparsest storytelling. This book is recommended for ages 3 to 7. Next is Sama Crushes the Code by Samaira Mehta and Brin Stevens, and illustrated by Jenny Alvarado. High school student and debut author Mehta teams up with Stevens and Alvarado to deliver a straightforward, coding-focused graphic novel inspired by the author's childhood. Though Sama's best friend Nancy reassures Sama that nothing will change between them upon entering middle school, the two drift apart once classes begin. While Nancy expands her social circle, Sama gravitates toward the tech club, though she feels out of place as a newcomer, often left on her own. Her attempts to participate in club activities are met with resistance, including her proposal to code a new bus route for her younger brother's struggling driver. The club leader dismisses the idea because it isn't going to win any prizes at the upcoming Code Crusher Championship. Despite these setbacks, Sama's determination grows. She pursues increasingly ambitious coding challenges and even begins teaching her younger brother coding. Technical concepts such as functions, parallelism, and queues are interwoven throughout, emphasizing how coding can be used both creatively and in a service of community needs. From practical problem-solving to designing roller coasters optimized for maximum fun. Blocky, boldly colored digital illustrations depict characters with varying skin tones. The outcome is a refreshing series opener centered around inclusion and accessibility in STEM spaces. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is The Clockwork Key by Vashti and illustrated by Rebecca Sheerin. While visiting a relic-hunting relative, two white-queued siblings find themselves embarking on a fantastical quest in this freewheeling steampunk romp from Hardy and Sheerin. Brother-sister duo Mabel and Will Greystone are excited to spend their summer with their daring explorer aunt Lucy and her talking cat Stuffy Grim, which she found years ago during a dig. Their goal is to travel to the faraway continent of Marivolia and uncover the whereabouts of the lost city of Umber, which was seemingly abandoned overnight. But they aren't the only ones on the trail. Rival relic hunter Byron Cogsworth is hot on their heels. Guided by an old map and a mysterious key, the group locate the hidden city, and when Mabel and Grimm wander off alone, they stumble upon a secret palace, and inside, a human-sized princess doll. Winding the doll with the key brings her to life, inadvertently awakening an ancient magic that threatens to trap Mabel and her family in Umber forever. Dynamic prose skillfully balances suspense, humor, and family dynamics, keeping readers on the edge of their seats as the children navigate both treasure hunts and magical mishaps. Animated grayscale illustrations with retro finishes amplify the fantastic elements. The result is a jaunty adventure that's ideal for fans of imaginative, family-centered hijinks. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. The final title for this week is The Broken Edge of the World by Alena Bruzas. This psychologically incisive supernatural novel by Bruzas blends the eerie cadence of dark fairy tales with modern suspense to probe themes of obsession. 17-year-old white-queued Sylvie travels from Seattle to the Nebraska Great Plains, desperate to escape her emotionally distant father and uncover the untold story of her late mother, whom Sylvie never knew. In Nebraska, Sylvie encounters welcoming teenage ranch hand Jack and becomes increasingly fixated on a mysterious, unnamed shepherd. Yet, beneath her tentative sense of belonging on the ranch lies a persistent dread. Sylvie is convinced that something monstrous moves through the landscape, but the OCD and intrusive thoughts she lives with, which she calls the monster inside my head, makes it difficult for her to trust her own perceptions. As she pieces together fragments of her mom's past through a box of personal items and the memories of Madeline, a lodge owner who once knew her mother, Sylvie begins to suspect that her family history is entangled with the creature she believes is haunting the locale. Sylvie's unflinchingly self-critical yet deeply empathetic first-person narration captures both the claustrophobic logic of her OCD and the aching vulnerability of a girl desperate to be seen and loved. It all adds up to a sensitive, fully fleshed-out portrayal of one teen navigating grief alongside mental health challenges. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. That covers the new releases for this week. Next, we'll be taking a look at some news. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Fair podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at BookFairPod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Next, let's take a look at some news, starting with a school board in Maryland seeking to make young adult titles inaccessible to students under the age of 18. Somerset County's school board is considering barring students under the age of 18 from reading any young adult literature in school libraries. The proposed policy also calls for the superintendent to discipline librarians if adult reading material appears in the children's sections of school libraries. The policy defines young adult as students over the age of 18, which would apply only to 12th grade students, and even then does not apply to all students in that grade, as some may still be 17 years old. Jacob Girding, president of the Maryland Association of School Board Librarians, said that the proposed definition would likely block all but the oldest students from reading classics like The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton and The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. The proposed policy, quote, demonstrates that the board is willing to sacrifice the educational development of its students in basic literacy, as most books in the library would no longer be intellectually stimulating to students over the age of 12, end quote. This article points out that Somerset County's MAGA school board has attempted to impose conservative views on the small, rural Eastern Shore school system with fewer than 3,000 students. Last year, the board attempted to completely eliminate school librarians before reversing course when county commissioners allocated an extra $1 million in funds to keep them. The Somerset School Board's proposals also go against Maryland's Freedom to Read Act. The policy also includes a line saying that the board will prioritize classics over other literature in selecting new materials. This is something new to me, and it aligns with the conservative values of elected and appointed officials that seek to ban books. If you follow the Book Fair podcast, it is clear that publishing has become more inclusive of minority voices in recent years. Deprioritizing contemporary fiction will inherently include less diverse titles. Next, a story from Michigan where the American Civil Liberties Union is raising the alarm over a library board relocating LGBTQ+ books. Both the American Civil Liberties Union and the director of the Cromaine District Library in Heartland are raising concerns after the Library Board of Trustees decided to reshelve 148 challenged books without review, many of which feature LGBTQ+ topics, characters, and authors. In October, the board had committed to reviewing more than 200 challenged titles, and now it seems that the process has been completely abandoned. As of the board's May meeting, board president Janine Gogoleski said that the board had read 58 of the 218 challenged books. The board's treasurer made a motion to uphold the previous commitment to manually review titles, but the proposal was rejected with a 4-1 vote on another motion to move the remaining books to the adult section without further review. Jay Kaplan, an attorney with the Michigan ACLU's LGBTQ+ project, who had been monitoring book challenges and policy changes at the library, sent a letter to the board saying, quote, given the disregard for the review process that the board promulgated, coupled with previous statements by some trustees that they are opposed to LGBTQ materials, we believe that the recent action by the board raises serious due process and First Amendment issues. End quote. In his letter, Kaplan also pointed to the board's decision to seek separate legal advice from Alliance Defending Freedom, after its own counsel warned that adopting any steps to restrict access to challenged materials would place the library on shaky ground. The Southern Poverty Law Center has classified Alliance Defending Freedom as a hate group, noting that the group supported the recriminalization of sexual acts between consenting LGBTQ adults and defended state-sanctioned sterilization of trans people. The Cromaine District Library is currently in violation of its own policy by skipping manual review of challenged titles. While discussing Kaplan's letter at the board's most recent meeting, Library Director Sarah Niedert said, quote, here's the question my staff have asked me. If the board can disregard the review process in this case, under what circumstances would it be required to follow it? End quote. Before the vote to reshelve the titles, one board member suggested a policy change that would prevent a single individual from challenging such a large number of books at one time. The board did not choose to adopt this policy before moving ahead with relocating the titles to the adult section. Next, moving on to the good news for the week, starting with the Governor of New Hampshire vetoing a book banning bill. New Hampshire Governor Kelly Ayotte, in only the second year of her tenure as governor, has recently vetoed a total of 9 bills, many of which have been described as lightning rod political issues. House Bill 1442, called simply the Bathroom Bill, would allow businesses to separate bathrooms, locker rooms, sports teams, and other accommodations by biological sex. This would exclude trans people from using the bathrooms or public spaces aligning with their gender identity in certain businesses. There have already been 3 other instances of Governor Ayotte vetoing similar legislation in the past. House Bill 434 would require school districts to establish formal policies for removing content from schools that is, quote, obscene and harmful to minors. The bill would create a standardized removal process in which parents could challenge any book, magazine, film, video, web-based content, sound recording, or live performance that is offered to students. The legislation defines material harmful to minors as any that appeals to a minor's prurient interest in sex, depicts or describes sexual conduct in a manner, quote, so explicit as to be patently offensive to contemporary adult standards with respect to what is suitable material to minors, end quote. Republican lawmakers have pushed for similar legislation for years, arguing it is necessary to remove content that is graphic to the point of being pornographic. State law in New Hampshire already allows parents to opt children out of course materials on an individual basis, without removing access to it for other students, as long as the guardian makes an arrangement for a suitable alternative. Governor Ayotte said of the veto, quote, as a parent, I understand and appreciate the concerns parents have about their children being exposed to age-inappropriate or objectionable materials in schools. At the same time, existing New Hampshire law already requires school districts to adopt a policy allowing an exception to specific course material based on a parent's determination that the material is objectionable. End quote. Our final story for this week comes from Utah, a state with one of the most strict book banning policies in the country. In Utah, if 3 schools have challenged and removed a title, it is added to a statewide banned list, removing it from all public schools in the state. As the total list of banned titles in the state of Utah keeps increasing, a group of LGBTQ+ organizations and independent bookstores have teamed up to hand out free copies of banned books. Read Behind the Bans is a campaign that includes the King's English Bookshop, Under the Umbrella Bookstore, the Legendarium Bookstore, and Weller Bookworks, along with Utah's LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce and Safe Zone Utah. The groups behind this campaign have said that the giveaways will continue until Utah ends its practice of removing titles from schools statewide. Using only $450 of funds raised for the first giveaway during the SLC Pride Festival, a table was set up with stacks of banned books, including Looking for Alaska by John Green and other titles banned from Utah public schools. On the topic of bans, the Salt Lake Tribune found that nearly all of the state's bans come from only 2 districts. Davis and Washington County were 2 of the first districts to ban 34 of the 35 titles banned statewide. While the stores behind Read Between the Bans are not communicating that banned books will be given away for free at their individual locations, there is a calendar of planned giveaways on the Utah LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce website at utahlgbtqchamber.org. There are currently no further dates set for the next giveaway, but be on the lookout if you're in Utah for the next Read Between the Bans event. This will conclude another episode of the Book Fair podcast. Coming this Friday, we will have an interview with Alex Ritney, author of Maybe Tomorrow I'll Know. If you'd like to stay up to date with the show, you can follow wherever you are currently listening or on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at BookFairPod. If you'd like to help the Book Fair podcast grow, you can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. You can find links to news sources as well as episodes posted early. Simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.